So in this session, we are going to see about data definition language in detail. And to start with, we are going to jump into create statements. What are the type of create statements? And these create statements are the ones which is going to help us to define an object inside the database. So this is the SQL file which I have opened, and here are the list of types of variants of create statement. Create statement is used to create or define a database object inside the database. Yeah, let's go. So type 1, we are going to see how many types are there. So type 1, I have given the statement like create table, a table name, all underscore test1, test code, and then varchar2 is the data type, and then test type, it is of character type. So this table all test1 is having only 2 columns, right? Create table, table name, you open the bracket, and within the bracket you define the number of columns you need. Okay, test code and test type are the two different columns which are having respective data types. So we've already covered about the data types, varchar2 and character, and I've given the maximum length in the next to the data type. Let's run this create statement. Yes, I want to run. Okay, so table all test1 is created. Well and good. So this is a type 1 create statement. Can we go ahead and create another table in the same type? So here I have included more number of columns. Create table test table 1. Okay, test table 1. So create table table name. I have given a list of columns, corresponding data types, and the maximum length. Okay, so we are going to run this statement as well. Okay, so we have run and the table has been created. So once you have created the table, let's go and check whether it is actually reflecting here or not. Yes, we do have. There are certain inbuilt tables which are already available, like countries, departments, employees and all. But all test 1 here and the test table 1 here, these are the two tables which we have created now. Okay, so these are the type 1 create statements where you define a table with a column, number of columns, and corresponding data type of max length of that particular column. So nothing else is required, only the column and the data type is required here. Okay, what is a type 2? Okay, in type 2, again we are going to practice two different tables. So in table 2, all test 2, I have given the statement type 2, create table table name, that remains the same. Now additionally, apart from the column names listed, test code, test domain and test type, I have given correspondingly the respective data types and the maximum length. Apart from it, okay, apart from it, what next have I given is the constraints for each and every column. Okay, so we have already learned about why we use data type and why we use constraints. So constraints are nothing but to validate whether it is a valid data or not. And data types are nothing but which is going to restrict us to put right data, means a type of data, right kind of data inside the particular column. So that is what it is all about. So here in the type 2 create statement, what we do is we put create table table name, list of columns and the respective data types along with the corresponding constraints. Okay, let's run this. Great. So now we'll see there are only two tables. We have created all test 2. So what you have to do is you go and right click on the tables and click on refresh. Okay, now you're able to see the all test 2 here, right, which we have created recently. Let's go and create one more. So in the first table, I have used primary key, not null and not null. So code is going to be the primary key and the other two, domain and type, are going to be not null. Here I have used little quite more number of constraints. Okay, so what have I used here? Create table, table name, test table 2 here, and I've used a test ID as a primary key and test name as not null because I don't want any test name ID alone given, the name of the test is not given. No, so I don't want to use any null values or leave it empty. So I'm going to record it or capture all the values. So I've given the not null. And the next one is test code. So test code again, it is actually existing in the first table, all test 2. Right? The previous table which we created, it is actually referencing this table. Test code is the primary key. Yeah. So we are going to reference this test code primary key in the second table. So test code of this data type references all test 2. Give the table 2, all test 2 table name of which column from that particular table. Okay. So this test code is going to refer the test code of the previous table. Test code references all test 2's test code. That is how you define a foreign key. Okay, that is how you reference a particular column of the previously existing primary key column of the other table. Okay, then the next one is unique key. It is simple. The last one I have used the check constraint. We have seen check constraints are used for adding a condition over the particular column, right? So here what we have done is check off. See, test subject mark. Okay, mark is the column. So marks, it is having its own data type. Then check this test subject mark is less than 100. I don't want any test mark to be greater than 100. I don't want it. So what I do is I give less than 100. So what does it mean? So no one gets to get 100? Yes, exactly. That's what I'm trying to test here. So only less than 100. So up to 99, the mark can be entered. Okay. So just run this statement. Yes, the table has been created. What do you have to do? Go right click and click on refresh to see the table here. Right? So these are the tables which we are trying to create. Tables means actually you're giving a table name and then how many columns are there. Each column name you're giving and then each column what is the data type you're giving and then the constraints are also given. So the first type is only the table with column and data type. The second type is the table with column, data type and constraint. Yes, let's go to the third one. Okay, what is it going to be the third one? Type 3. So again in here, it is more or less like second one. But what happens here is we are trying to give a name for the constraint which we are going to give. Okay, so what happens here? Create table, table name remains constant. The next is column name, test code. The data type, that is also constant. Nobody can change it. These are defaults. Next comes constraint, the keyword constraint. Okay, this is a keyword like create and table. These are the keywords, and all test 3 is the name which we give, and then test code is the column name which we give. Varchar 2 is the data type. Constraint is the keyword, and we are trying to give a name for the constraint which we are trying to create. So what is the constraint we are trying to give? Primary key constraint. Right? Primary key constraint. So what we do, we are applying this primary key constraint on which particular column? Test code. So I have chosen to name it like this. TC, test code underscore PK, which is nothing but primary key. So in this particular table, I'm actually creating a column with the data type and a constraint primary key or whatever constraint, and I'm actually giving a name for that particular constraint as well. That is the third type of creating a table. So let's go ahead and run this. Good, it got created. Let's refresh. Okay. So the same thing happens here all over. like the same way as type 2, the only change here is you will be adding the constraint keyword and the name of the constraint. For each and every column, we are going to give the name. Now you might ask, why do I have to do this naming for a constraint? Okay, I'm already so much into naming a table and naming the column. Yes, naming a constraint would also help if you want to do any alteration in the future on that particular constraint. Say for example, you don't want to have the constraint anymore, or you want to add on a constraint, you want to alter the constraint, you want to disable, enable the constraint. All these kind of actions can be performed easily if you have named it. Okay, otherwise what would have happened? Let's see, let's run this. It is the second table of the same type. Okay, now I'm going to show you what is the difference between giving a name and not giving a name. Okay, so what happened is we have created three sets of three types of statements, so three sets of types of tables. So let's go and see the first table. So in the first table, what happens when I double click, the table itself has opened on here, and now you're able to see the columns, right? Under the columns tab here, you are listed with the columns which has been created under that particular table. So we have only two columns here, the particular data type. And the next tab is data. We have not inserted or any pushed or saved any data inside the table, so we don't have anything in this particular page. And the next is constraints. We are not supposed to have any constraint. Yes, we are not having constraint. Why? Because the first type, we plainly gave creatable table name. We created a table with a column and a data type. That's all. We did not bother about giving a constraint. So the first type of create statement or the default create statement requires only the table name, column name, and the data type. Constraints are not mandatory, but it is always good to give constraint for our own benefits. Okay, so now you don't have anything here, right? Okay, let's go to the second table. Okay, in the second table here. Okay, this is cool, right? Here we have three columns here. Okay, we have three columns, code, domain, and type. And data, obviously, we are not supposed to have any data, so we don't have. Let's go to constraint. We are seeing three different constraints, right? Here in these three different constraints, what is the constraint name given here? It is all SYS, system generated constraint names. It is all with alphanumeric and symbols, right? Sys underscore C007462. It doesn't actually give any meaning to us, like whether on which column it is applied, or it doesn't depict any column name or what kind of constraint it has been applied with, right? But it is actually of numbers and alphanumeric, which the system would understand, right? So this is kind of pretty hard for us to remember and do any changes in the future. When you click on any particular constraint, what you would do is you'll get at the bottom, you can see on which column it is actually applied on. So this particular constraint has been applied on test domain column. And what is the constraint type? Check. It is checking whether it is null or not. Means what does it do? It is not null constraint. So yes, not null constraints are actually under the type of check, means whether it is checking whether it is null or not. Okay. Okay, so now we have seen, let's see the complicated constraints as well simultaneously so that you can see how the foreign keys are displayed. Yeah, coming here, you're able to click. These are the list of system generated constraint names. And when you select any of the columns, like any of the constraint rows, then you would get test ID. This is the column primary key is applied on. When you click on the second one, it is applied on subject mark. Let's go to the fifth row, which it states as foreign key. Okay, so this is applied on test code. Again in R owner, R table, and R constraint name. What does these actually refer to? R owner is a reference owner, HR, because the reference table also is existing in the same schema connection. And again, R table name, which is nothing but the reference table name. So this particular foreign key is actually referring this table in this HR schema and this constraint name, right? So it is actually referencing another constraint, means the reference table is this and the reference owner is this. So what is the column name? Test code. Okay, so this is how in type 2, like you create a table with column data type and blindly you give just what constraint you want to apply on that particular column. The third type is where we have named the constraint as well. Let's go and see those tables. Alt S3. Good. See, here it is depicted TC underscore PK. By the name itself, we are able to make it out test code. When we click, yes, it is applied on test code, right? We are supposed to click on it and come down here and see the column name. But by the name which we have given, we can understand it really very easy. Test code is the primary key. And then test domain, not null. Test type is not null. So NN is for not null, PK is for primary key, UK is for unique, then foreign key SK. So these are the constraint names which we can suffix it with. So this is how you actually make it little easier for us to future purpose usage and all. Okay, so these are the three types, whatever we have seen till now. And the next type is fourth type. This is like pretty much used in real time and most of the time when you have to take a backup of a table. Okay, you create a table, a copy table of the existing table. What would you do? What you would do is you select everything from the table. Select star. Star means all the rows and columns. So select star from whatever table you want. Now here what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to create a copy table of all test 1. All underscore test 1 table has been copied and recreated as all underscore test 4. Okay, so this is beneficial only when the data is there inside this table. For now, we don't have any data inside all test 1, but imagine in real time, you will be having tables with data, right? So with the data table, if you want to have a backup copy of that table, before you even actually go and do some, play with or manipulate some data like insert or, delete and do perform some actions on the table data, but you're not sure of doing it, what would you do? You always have a copy of it. You take a copy and then you play with the data. If everything goes fine, then fine. If it is not going fine, you can always delete, drop the table and rename this to the original and keep the copy as it is, right? So this is for backing up. So how do you do the backup? Create table, the new table name as, so this is the statement, create table, the new table name as, select start from that particular table. So with the select statement, can we create a table? Yes. Okay, so the fourth type of create statement is selecting a particular table, like selecting the related required columns and from a table and then recreating a backup or a copy of that particular table. Okay, so let's see whether this works. Run it. Good, it has created all test 4. Let's go back here and refresh it. Yes, all test 4 has been created. Okay, very good. So that's all about the create statement. Okay, so these are the list of 4 types of create statements which we could use as part of this SQL.